Tom Ulbrich is the president and CEO of Goodwill, Western New York. He's working to blur the lines between for-profit and the nonprofit realms. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me, and super excited to be able to chat with you this morning.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal lives, more about your work, and why you do what you do.
Sure. I'm gonna give you a little long personal life because I think it's important to this story. Um, where I'm at today is sort of like the perfect culmination if you can look backwards in your life and see how pieces all knit together to give you a skill set. So I used to teach entrepreneurship, and there's a concept that we call 50,000 chunks of experience, where entrepreneurs are really fulfilled and successful when they gain all these little pieces. And I think my life looking backward is that. So I'll go through it as quickly as I can, but again, think it's important. So I grew up out in a community outside Buffalo, New York, in a family business, and my dad had a garden center. He was a forester, had managed some large Christmas tree farms in the Adirondacks, moved to outside of Buffalo, and was creating the same here in Western New York. So when I was ready to go to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to school for ornamental horticulture and landscape design. That was actually my first degree, and went immediately into the family business. A lot of people are like, why that? And I'm going to be really truthful with you. The why was it was the fastest way to get married to my high school sweetheart. There was a job there. So it's like, hey, at the time, it made perfect sense, and super glad I did it. But I was in the family business for over 20 years, and then owned it after a lot of the family had left too. But along the way, I built another company. I built an e-commerce company, sort of like many entrepreneurs do out of necessity within the other business. We had this need to purchase a lot of commercial lawnmower parts, so I started selling them to other people. That business scaled into a national e-commerce company over time, which I exited and sold in 2019. But in early 2000s, I went to a program at the University of Buffalo called the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. It was for small business owners. When I went through that program, I recognized you do a lot of self-discovery. I recognize I liked my job. My job was significant, but I've been doing a lot of lobbying for small businesses, representing small business through the National Federation of Independent Business. At New York State level, I was a vice chair. And I decided, you know what? I think I would like to keep my businesses, but go into political office and represent the business community there. I had this bright idea that that was a good thing to do, which to do that, I felt I needed a little bit more broad education. I went back to UB for my MBA in my mid 40s, completed that in 2006, ran for office, learned really hard lessons about politics and running for office. I wasn't successful, but my small business platform and my attachment to university led to an opportunity of actually running the center that I went through at the time. So I was at the University of Buffalo. I ended up running the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, and then building with the team there a lot of entrepreneurial support programs for both students and for the community at large. So I was there for 12 years. I taught entrepreneurship, social innovation, worked a lot with business owners, and eventually had a dual appointment as assistant dean at the School of Management and the School of Social Work, where in 2019 I was working on social innovation, or this intersection of the for-profit mentality and the nonprofit mentality. So what I used to call the entrepreneurial nonprofit. How can a nonprofit be less dependent? Had no intention of leaving the university, was headhunted, recruited in 2019, and said no for a couple of months. Eventually sat down with the board. They challenged the entrepreneur in me and said, hey, you're doing this all in academia. Goodwill is the perfect model. It's a social innovation model where you can do well and self-fund a lot of your work if you run a great business. So I bid on that in 2019, and it was, I think, early 2020 when I signed a letter of intent to come here. Then this little thing called COVID happened. between the time I signed that and my start date was May 1st, which happened to coincide with the end of the semester. So I walked into Goodwill May 1st, 2020, with everything shut down. We're not a huge organization, but we have 240 employees. Three people were working. Every store was shut. Every workforce program shut. And that was my introduction to the world. But I got to tell you, that's the backstory. Sorry, it was very long, but that's how we got to here. And it is, when I look backwards, it is the perfect fit today of all those activities coming together and all those little skills from entrepreneurship, skills from leadership, skills from teaching, all those coming together in a career, which really I get jazzed to get up every single day and come here and work with the team and do the work that we're doing.
Well, I think that that is incredible, and I think it's a perfect illustration because it does seem like it's divine in some form or fashion.
In a way, and I do believe that you're here for a purpose. So, I know people think differently about that, but I do believe that there's the higher power, and we're here for a purpose. And and you often, I think, don't see that until you look backwards, right? You never seem to see it in the moment, but you see where where things are stitched together over time.
It is it that can be both. It can be absolutely true. I can also see that be an exercise in self-deception if I'm not careful.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that is an excellent point of view, right? It certainly can be that, and I guess a lot comes back to your worldviews
Hmm.
as to how you might interpret that.
Yeah, but
That's
in
a
your
great point.
case, in your case, it makes perfect sense. So, the 50,000, did you say 50,000 chunks?
Yeah, 50,000 chunks of experience is a thing it's a concept we taught in entrepreneurship, meaning a lot of entrepreneurs, we think of Mark Zuckerberg, being 21 years old, super just killing it. The fact is, most entrepreneurs are successful a little bit later in their life, typically late 30s, early 40s. And if you look backwards again, gaining all these chunks of experience, and it might be lessons learned from an entrepreneurial parent or an uncle. It might be running a lemonade stand, having a paper route. We don't have paper routes anymore, I guess, for the most part. But all those little things that you do and you learn, it might be going to work at a large company and learning about an industry and then seeing an opportunity that your company didn't want to meet. So that's that concept of people gaining these chunks of experience over time. And I think Malcolm Gladwell does a good job talking about it a little bit in a different way, where he talks about, I think he calls it 10,000 hours, where people get the experience necessary to really, hit a tipping point, so to speak.
It strikes me that you have unique qualification in that you spent decades in entrepreneurship, in the family business, which is a whole nother animal, and then doing your doing your own thing, doing the ecom business, and then you get into academic. Well, then you put your foot into politics as well. So there's all of that, and then you spend a decade or more in academia, and now here you are blending both of them. So again, not to retrace the steps, but do you think that you would have been successful running Goodwill had you not done the academia part?
No, I honestly don't. I don't think so. I think the academia part, one of the challenges I think of an entrepreneur running a nonprofit are understanding, um, to me, a nonprofit is a tax status. That being said, and I believe we still have to run a great business and all the things that make a great business. That being said, there is an expectation of a bit more balance inside of a nonprofit when it comes to people. And I think that, or not think, I know my time in academia, especially in the School of Social Work, gave me that balance and that understanding that the world isn't always about push, 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 grind, 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 but finding the balance between the two. So I do think, looking backwards again, that I'm not going to say it wouldn't have been successful, but I don't know we would have been able to do what we're doing today as a team, without all that experience. Because a lot of my work here is focusing on building a great team and building leaders. I think that's what leadership is about, is how do you build the next generation of leaders, give them opportunity to be successful. And it's the people that make a business run. You can have all the cash in the world, the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have people to execute on it, you have nothing. So long, again, long answer, but it really goes back to finding that balance between the people and understanding how people fit into the business equation.
It is a unique hybrid, and you mentioned that you were involved in leadership in the School of Management and the School of Social Work, which might be considered to be strange bedfellows to a degree. But as you describe it, it seems like it's an obvious thing, particularly in business. Why wouldn't we want to have both of those parts of our brain or heart activated at the same time?
It's actually the perfect fit, I believe. And that's what I noticed. The dean at the School of Social Work, who I will be forever grateful, Nancy Smith, really looked at social work um, through a business lens too. And she looked at business through a social work lens. And what I quickly realized when I started working with her in my role was a lot of what we teach about the skills of entrepreneurship are exactly the same skills that relate to social work and their people skills, right? The great entrepreneurs of the world, a lot of people think I think of entrepreneurship and us that are entrepreneurs as selfish and greedy and inward focused. The fact is, if we're not looking at the world around us, understanding what a customer wants to buy, and interacting with people all the time, building teams, pulling together financing, all those require people skills. So I believe it's a perfect marriage, and I'm a big proponent. I think most businesses, it would be the benefit them to have a social work member on their team. We have some people on our team that are MBA dual degree, like MBA in social work, which is a great fit because they've had experience of both sides. But I think they're very intertwined, even though they seem like strange bedfalls.
And as we sort of talk through it, it makes, again, pretty perfect sense. Um, what is what are the big differentiators between management and social work, or maybe a better definition of what social work is? I guess that's not necessarily obvious.
Yeah, so my work at social work, I want to be clear, I am not a trained social worker. So my work in the School of Social Work was around social innovation and social entrepreneurship. So really staying in the field that I had. So I can't speak directly to defining social work, as it should be defined academically. But again, I think there's a lot of crossovers, and I do think a lot of what you would learn and what I was exposed to in social work when it comes to management or leadership. And again, those leadership management, I know people say they're different things, but I always think that we want our managers here to be leaders too. We want them to lead people. And I think every person is a leader in some capacity, but that leadership aspect comes in, which is really connecting to individuals. You said it earlier, on an emotional level, right? We as human beings, we're emotional beings. And certainly there's the head decisions, but there's also the heart decisions. And every individual is, you know, I don't think we really motivate people, but every person is a unique human being. So you have to figure out how to connect to them individually in order to allow them to be motivated and see the big vision and want to be part of it, of where we're going with the company. And I think the other thing I'd say around it is when I think about social work, I think a lot of famous people in history, you wouldn't call it social work, but social movements. It's really about creating movements. And, you know, we move, we join a movement because we feel like we belong. So going back to your question, I think it's creating that sense of belonging and not asking people to join before they feel like they should belong, if that makes sense. And when people belong, they join the movement. And I think a lot about our business like that. We are a movement, doing really good work in the community, while giving our employees the opportunity to do well also.
I think that that is very powerful. It makes sense to me that striving for connection, not necessarily trying to motivate people. And what I wrote down is invite people to join.
Yes. Yeah. Can I like what you said even better? Striving to create connection with people. And we all connect in different ways. So that back to your question, a lot of it is, I think, the skills of social work is the people skills of the world.
And I've I've long sort of known that each of us seeks a purpose-driven life and something that we want, not necessarily something that's obvious. So if I'm in a position as a leader to be thinking, be thoughtful and intentional about creating some kind of a movement within my organization, be it for profit or not for profit, and then looking for people and inviting them to join in that, then we're really onto something.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what I think of my role is, excuse me, and a leader's role is, you nailed it. For there to be a purpose, I think there needs to be a big vision. And it needs to be, some people call it a big, hairy, audacious goal. Some people call it a big vision. There needs to be something out there that we think we can barely get to that's bigger than ourselves. And I think the job of a leader is, once the organization has created that, um, is to hold that flag high all the time, the vision, because the truth is, just when we're sick of repeating ourselves and saying it, only then are people starting to hear us. And it sometimes takes people a long time to hear a message, to buy into a message. And our job, I think, is consistency, repetition, and not forgetting about where we're headed, because you are going to attract, develop, and retain talent when people feel like they belong to something, as you said, to bigger purpose, something much bigger than themselves.
Which could be a frustrating and hard thing.
It can be. It can be. And in this case, we're very, very fortunate. We have a great team. In COVID, in a sense, as horrible a disease as it is, and all the tragedy that came out of it, was an opportunity for this organization to really rethink about the needs are of the community going forward. We have a very supportive board, um, a great management team that is all relatively new. Most of the management team has come right around the time that I've come, and we were handed we were handed off um, a healthy business that probably needed to innovate and go in a different direction post COVID-19. And we've had the opportunity to do that and really scaled and grown the business and the impact that we have in the community. Um, the organization was around in 2020, probably ended up around 9.5, 10 million. We'll finish this year, I think, around 22 million. And the impact that's associated with that is fantastic.
That's awesome. For people who are intrigued by our conversation, it's not obvious where I can learn to sort of marry those things without spending 10 years doing what you did. So how can I shorten that learning curve?
Yeah, sure. I think the easiest way, you can always reach out to me through our organization through Goodwill, WNY.org. Or you can reach out to me, Thomas Ulbrich on LinkedIn. And if you're really interested in some of these concepts, one of the things that I'm very fortunate that my board of directors has supported and encouraged me to do, I really missed the work I used to do with entrepreneurs. So I started writing about it, and the board has encouraged me to share more of it. So I have a newsletter on LinkedIn called Soar, Don't Settle, where I share a lot of this, just brain dump a lot of these learnings that I've had, as well as stuff that I learned from other people. Because, just like a couple things you said today, George, they resonate with me. And I think I'm a continuous learner. I'm going to learn to the day I'm done here on this earth. And I think I get as much value out of that newsletter, hearing from other people. People challenge me, going, I don't think that concept's good, or I love that concept, or here's another concept. So join me on Sword Don't Settle. We're not selling anything. It's just an information share, and I'm happy to share any of this with anybody that's interested.
I love it. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show Tom your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Will you give us the website again, Tom?
Yes, it is goodwillwny.org.
Excellent. Go to goodwillwny.org and then follow Thomas Ulbrich, Tom spelled the normal way, Ulbrich, on LinkedIn and subscribe to his Soar Don't Settle newsletter and get thinking on the path that we've been talking about because I think that there's a lot of wisdom and a path forward for a lot of success in business and the nonprofit space. So, thanks again, Tom.
Thanks so much, George. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.